Alright guys, I'm just going to go ahead and do just one video on activity 22 because it's really activity 20 with one new little twist, the trig identities. So we're going to just kind of walk through solving this problem. Sine squared theta equals cosine theta plus 1. We're going to have to use identities. One of the keys to doing this is actually writing it all into one trig function. So either write everything in terms of sine or write everything in terms of cosine. In this case, it's going to be pretty easy to write everything in terms of cosine. We have the Pythagorean identity, which states sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Well, we can manipulate this with algebra to get sine squared theta equals 1 minus cosine squared theta. What's really nice is that sine squared theta right here and sine squared theta right here are the same thing. So we can actually replace it with 1 minus cosine squared theta because they're an equivalent value. So I can actually rewrite this expression as 1 minus cosine squared theta equals cosine theta plus 1. From here, it's just algebra to solve. So we need to we're going to get everything on one side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1 and add cosine squared, just simply because I don't like dealing with negatives to both sides. So we get 0 equals cosine squared theta plus cosine theta. Here, go ahead and factor out your greatest common factor. So I'm still going to get 0 equals cosine theta times cosine theta plus 1. Just like in algebra, we're going to set both terms equal to 0. So we're going to have cosine theta equals 0. And of course then cosine theta plus 1 equals 0. Right here, cosine theta equals 0. You can go look on your unit circle. And this is kind of a unique thing, whereas we're not really going to use reference angles to solve this because this problem, the answers actually lie on the x and y axis. Cosine 0 occurs at pi over 2 as well as 3 pi over 2, which is the positive and negative y-axis. Over here, we're going to ahead and isolate cosine theta by itself. We'll get cosine theta equals negative 1. Well, if you look on your unit circle, cosine theta equals negative 1 only happens at one spot, which is pi. So if we're given an interval in which it's going to be from 0 to 2 pi, and we don't include 2 pi, we're only going to have 3 answers for this. The answer choices for this will be pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and pi. If you need to remember how to solve this using reference angles, go back and review the videos on activity 20. If you need to look at the trig identities, go back and look at activity 21. Really, this is activity 20 again. The only difference is by using substitution to replace equivalent values. In this case, we substituted sine squared theta with 1 minus cosine squared theta because of the Pythagorean identity. After that, it's just using your algebra skills that you have and then using your unit circle, or you can use the reference angles if it really is necessary.